There's a new Star Wars series. There's not a new Star Wars series. This one's canceled. There's a new TV show coming. There's a movie coming. Wait, that one's canceled too. What the heck is going on with Star Wars? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink. Star Wars is in this really strange place. They are trying to figure out what to do next. We've got a variety of series that they've been working on. The ones that have already come out have been successful to various degrees, and we have had various levels of quality across the board. Now, we have expansions into the Mandoverse time period, we have expansions into the High Republic, and the era between movies like Andor. So we've got a variety of ideas, a variety of creatives, and a variety of timelines that are being explored at this time. It still makes me wonder what the focus is going forward, but according to Alan Bergman, they are going to be working on some new live-action series, and says, quote, has a number of additional series that are in development, as well as the Mandalorian movie that is coming out in 2026. So there is so much to break down here. I'm honestly at this point so confused at the future direction. Obviously, I did not expect them to completely drop the live-action TV series or animated series. They keep Star Wars going forward in a way that they can kind of figure out what the heck they're doing behind the scenes with the movies and still have content coming out. Like if you look at the time period between Rise of Skywalker to now, we have yet to have a Star Wars movie, but we have had quite a bit of content. We've honestly probably had more content in this time period than the entire history of Star Wars before this time period. So there is a lot to be said in terms of what happens with a live action series. But it seemed to me like the focus was on movies much more. And it kind of made me start to think, like, I wonder if we get to a world where maybe we just get the movies, and they seem to have been making decisions that were ending the TV shows, with reports going about that, hey, Ahsoka Season 2 is planned to be the last season, and they're going to tie a bunch of the threads down. Andor Season 2 is the final season, which we already knew beforehand. Oh wait, they canceled the Acolyte, which seemed like it was prepping for more seasons. Skeleton Crew is here. I'm quite enjoying it, but it definitely seems like a one-off, except reports say they could possibly see it doing more seasons, which honestly would make more sense considering I think it had an estimated budget of $130 million instead of like $230 million like the Acolyte, which Alan Bergman also goes in the same interview. If you don't know, he's the co-chairman of the Disney Entertainment Company, and says, quote, we were happy with our performance, but it wasn't where it needed to be given the cost structure of that title, quite frankly, to go and make a season 2. So that's why we didn't do that. So clearly they're looking at the costs of these shows. They are looking at the impact that it has had on basically the impact across the board. Because if you look at online is never representative of the entire fan base that would be watching something on Star Wars or just streaming. When you look at the discourse around whether Acolyte is good, whether it destroys canon, whether it's quote-unquote woke garbage, whether it's insert complaint here, there was a large... actually, not really large, but there was a small, very vocal minority that were heavily against Acolyte for terrible reasons, to be honest. But there was also a variety of fans in the opposite direction that were also incredibly toxic, but in the positive way. So we had those two forces that were fighting each other online for the show. But if you step back and get offline, people just were like, okay, if they had watched it, or they never had heard of it. So there's a lot of things like this where if there's discourse around things online, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to carry over into the real world for the average Star Wars fan. And I think this is ultimately the takeaway here, is that Star Wars is honestly getting watered down. It is in a place where we've gotten more content, but at that same breath, you can kind of skip it. It feels very skippable in a lot of ways. Like, it doesn't seem like they are valuing the viewer. It doesn't seem like they are looking to really expand Star Wars. They're just trying to milk as much content. And I mean content in the most insulting way possible that you can take it. They have treated Star Wars in terms of not for story, but truly just content to be put out there. And I think that's a shame for many Star Wars fans that have come to love Star Wars, whether it is the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy, or even the Mandalorian series. I think they, meaning Disney, and I'm going to put this all on Disney. I don't think we can say much in terms of like Dave Filoni or Kathleen Kennedy. This is a top-down decision. They are just looking to kind of just take advantage of what they thought was a very gullible audience in terms of what they put out. But after so many years, they're finding, hey, we as Star Wars fans, we want quality stories. We want something that feels like the people that are making it care about it, care about telling a story, not trying to put as much ideas and just kind of fluff in this limited time period as possible. I'm looking at you, Dave Filoni. It honestly still confuses me, like what direction they're going with, because Star Wars doesn't make money from the streaming shows. They don't clearly make money from this. If you look at really the numbers, movies are the things that really push the needle for Disney as a whole. As Star Wars as a whole, it started in movies, and it's just a recent thing that it is in the TV series side of things. It does make me wonder, like, what the future is for Star Wars. Whether or not we're going to see this heavy movement into series like Alan Bergman kind of hints at, or if we are going to see them continue to pull back from this idea of like fewer TV shows and more of the movie space. I mean, there's a lot to break down here, because if you look at the Acolyte had a budget of about 230 million, 250 million, something around there. And if you look at that budget versus something like Oppenheimer had a $100 million budget and a $100 million marketing budget. So it still had a smaller budget and produced $1 billion worth of sales. Meanwhile, Acolyte got canceled after its first season, did not live up to the quality in terms of what that money looked like. If you look at the Acolyte and you look at Oppenheimer, it's like, which one feels like it had $250 million in it? It's definitely not Acolyte. Needless to say, like, there is a big focus here on, like, if they're going to put something like this out there, it needs to have a reception that justifies the massive budget. So those are some of the thoughts that I have around this story of Alan Bergman and the Disney decision for series and what that ultimately looks like going forward. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out our podcast, and may the Force be with you.